Chapter 5. A Modern Dilemma. Women's Rights. Generally speaking, women have been treated unfairly throughout history. Many of their sacrifices and labors have been unnoticed, forgotten, or never recorded not only anciently, but also in our own dispensation. So it is no wonder that most of them feel inferior to men and feel they are not entitled to hold the priesthood. In her Sunstone Symposium paper, Andrea Moore Emmett wrote, "Yes, Mormon women know of those nameless pioneer women who broke their china into pieces for the Nauvoo temple, bore and buried babies on the plains, and sacrificed their hearts to become plural wives. Mormon women know something of Emma and Lucy Mack Smith. But that's where it ends. Where are all those elusive faces and names of sisters and the individual intimate stories of the lives they lived? They can be found in unreachable archives and the special collections at the BYU Library, covered with the dust of unuse. The names and faces of women whose real-life experiences parallel those of the men. Men whose bigger-than-life stories are told and retold as role models churchwide to our daughters as well as our sons. Subordination of Women Within the Latter-day Saint Church. Emmett, 1990 Sunstone Symposium paper, page 2. Many LDS women of today feel that they have become the victims of such sexual inequality and that they have lost their claim to priesthood privileges and to many of their other deserved rights. Margaret Toscano holds the liberal opinion that Joseph Smith tried to rectify the situation and actually intended to give women the priesthood. Joseph Smith's great declaration of power and blessing to women and his attempt to extend the priesthood to them has been negated by a more recent conservative reaction that has closed the doors of priesthood to women, leaving the rank-and-file members of the church to believe, generally, that priesthood is something that God does not want women to have. A majority of LDS women accept this tradition as doctrine. Any woman who stands forth to remind us of the true situation or to assert a desire for priesthood is likely to be stigmatized as unfaithful and power-hungry. Women in the Priesthood Hierarchy. Toscano, paper at First Mormon Women's Forum, page 15. Nevertheless, a fairly universal disregard for women's rights and privileges has been going on throughout the pages of history, but because of women's efforts, their recognition has been improving. For example, in 1920 women won the right to vote with the passage of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. The women's suffrage movement had labored for 72 years to attain it, and now women were accepted as more a part of the male system in their social, political, and religious activities. It was meant to help bring equality and unity to the male-female relationship. However, it may have produced more problems than it solved. We have been taught the competitive system in our politics, business, religion, and social activities until it has become a detriment instead of a benefit. Marriages have become so competitive that many of them conclude in divorce. Our society has clamored for women's independence and equality so vehemently that it is producing more and more single people rather than encouraging compatible marriages. The feminist movements have demanded an equality that is leading women toward freedom from men rather than companions to them. Women's rights were slow getting out of the starting gate, even in Mormondom. With all the light and knowledge of the Restoration, because of past traditions, women had difficulty in gaining the proper respect and rights they deserved. But when the prophet Joseph Smith established the Women's Relief Society, an important breakthrough took place. Gradually the women were accepted into other organizations and even on the staff of church publications, such as the Young Women Journal, the Woman's Exponent, and the Relief Society magazine. Their pleas for recognition and rights were more often noticed and acted upon. The woman question is the question of both man and woman's rights should as deeply interest men as women. Woman is the mother of the world, and her interests can no more be separated from those of man than could the world exist with only one sex. It is to be hoped that this fact will have full weight in the future agitation of the woman question. Woman's Exponent, Vol. 2, No. 1, June 1873, editorial. All honor and reverence to good men, but they and their attentions are not the only source of happiness on the earth, and need not fill up every thought of woman. And when men see that women can exist without them being constantly at hand, that they can learn to be self-reliant or depend upon each other for more or less happiness, it will perhaps take a little of the conceit out of some of them. Why? Woman's Exponent, September 30, 1874. 6 weeks after the printing of the above article, the Exponent continued with the subject, commenting on the women's place both in the home and the workplace. It argued, "It has been the popular cry that no woman could be a good, true, loving wife, and at the same time successfully follow any profession. If so, neither can a man do justice to any professional calling and prove a kind, affectionate, and loving husband. Heart vs. Head, Women's Exponent, November 15, 1874, page 92. Brigham Young's opinion of women's rights seemed to get more liberal as time went on during his administration. In 1865 he stated, "I am addressing myself to the ladies of the kingdom of God, to those who know how to keep their houses, furniture and beds pure and clean, who can cook food for their husbands and children in a way that it will be clean, tasteful and wholesome. The woman that can do this I call a lady." In this view I differ from the world generally, for the lady of the world is not supposed to know anything about what is going on in the kitchen. Her highest ambition is to be sure and be in the fashion, at no matter what cost to her husband or father. She considers that she may as well be out of the world as out of the fashion. J.D. 11-138. But in 1869, Brigham Young was encouraging women to develop their talents outside the home. As I have often told my sisters in the female relief societies, we have sisters here who, if they had the privilege of studying, would make just as good mathematicians or accountants as any man, and we think they ought to have the privilege to study these branches of knowledge that they may develop the powers with which they are endowed. We believe that women are useful, not only to sweep houses, wash dishes, make beds, and raise babies, but that they should stand behind the counter, study law or physics, or become good bookkeepers, and be able to do the business in any counting house, and all this to enlarge their sphere of usefulness, for the benefit of society at large. In following these things they but answer the design of their creation. J.D. 1361. Thus, the status of Mormon women improved during Brigham Young's administration. His reorganization of the Relief Society launched women into an era of public activity that involved them in business and gave them new economic status in a community that was itself concerned with economic identity. Within Mormonism's social order, where women had previously held no offices, they gained position and visibility as leaders in organizations for women and children. Though women were clearly not admitted to the priesthood, they began to share some of its influence over women through disbursement of funds and counsel at general, stake, and ward levels. Woman's Place in Brigham Young's World. Jill Mulvey-Dare, BYU Studies 18-3, Spring 1978, page 394. The push for emergence of women into the workplace continued until its eventual realization, but then expanding areas of women's liberation were desired, even requiring the changing of historical precedent and devout orthodoxy. But good things are often carried too far, as in the case of Sonia Johnson, whose activities attracted local and national media attention with her efforts to promote the Equal Rights Amendment. She encouraged civil disobedience and raised the pro-equal amendment flag above Temple Square along with her demonstrations. She labeled the LDS Church as the arch-enemy of equal rights. Sonia explained the whole situation in her book From Housewife to Heretic. Even though she was president of the Mormons for ERA, she had been excommunicated from the Mormon Church. Sonia proposed to give women the priesthood, and it will be the end of the Church's patriarchy and the beginning of a new era. SL Tribune, March 19, 1982. She was also reported as saying, "I just wish Mormon women would take advantage of their situation. They don't realize where they are, but they have the upper hand. They could push things a long way if they would. They've got the whip hand right now because church leaders are so afraid of what women might do." Ibid. From her, many others took up the banner for women's rights, i.e., Carol Lynn Pearson. "I want our children to know of the great lack of esteem for woman in the centuries after Christ, when St. Clement said, 'Every woman should be overwhelmed with shame at the very thought that she is a woman.' To know that St. Augustine denied women had souls and that this issue was debated at church councils. That Martin Luther said, 'Woman, though a stupid vessel, is essential. But man must always hold power over her, for he is higher and better than she.' I want them to be sad and angry for St. Teresa of Avila, who said, 'The very thought that I am a woman is enough to make my wings droop.' Our children need to know that 85% of those executed for witchcraft, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions, were women whose sins were a show of rebellion or an evidence of spiritual power, seen as a threat to the male-dominated church and society. They should know that an ancient Muslim mosque still bears the inscription, 'Women and dogs and other impure animals are not permitted to enter.' That in Morocco for centuries the custom was that the man rode the donkey and the woman walked 6 feet behind until World War II left many dangerous unexploded mines in the ground, after which the woman walked 6 feet in front of the donkey. That Chinese girl babies' feet were bound to keep them close to home and under complete male domination. That the phrase rule of thumb comes from Old English law that dictates that a husband cannot beat his wife with a rod larger than his thumb. Our children need to know this sad history. And they need to know about brave women and men who struggle to change it. Healing the Motherless House Pearson, as quoted in Women and the Priesthood, Turner, pages 237-38. Veleneal Adams stated, when Mormon women recognize that they are being defined by narrow, constrictive church images, some seek non-church avenues for identification and support. Some remain on church records but reduce their commitment and participation. Others feel damaged and suffer poor self-esteem or depression. Empowerment and Mormon Women's Publications, Adams, Women and Authority, page 64. Bettina Lindsay explained, today, historical development has for the first time created the necessary conditions by which large groups of women, eventually all women, can emancipate themselves from subordination. This transforming of women's consciousness about ourselves and our thoughts is a precondition for change for all of society. Women can no longer wait for permission, they now must link hands and unitedly step forward of their own accord to rebalance the world and hail forth Zion. We are here to symbolically unlock the third millennia AD to the daughters of Eve. Eve 2000, Lindsay, paper delivered at Mormon Women's Forum reception at the Lion House, May 16, 1989, pages 2-6. Generally speaking, the women of Utah have taken the greatest strides in defending their rights and freedoms. They have also shown their success in the workplace. It is reported that they have made the greatest jump in the workplace because more than 60% of the women in Utah work more than in any other state. SL Tribune, March 11, 1990. Then what conclusion shall we arrive at? Why, consequently, that the condition of woman today is much better in every respect than in the days of our grandmothers, and that the women of the future will, judging from the outlook of the present, far surpass us who are now upon the stage of action. Woman is learning to think, act and reason for herself, not to. Besides, many women are suddenly left helpless and alone by the death of husband or father, and how desolate under such circumstances will she be who has never been taught self-dependence. This is one of the lessons thoughtful women are learning today, and it will be a legacy better than wealth, for it will not take wings and fly away. Contributor 2183. It would be well for more men to realize and appreciate the support and blessing of a good woman. Strong-minded women are the very ones who will make the best aids and helpmeets for their husbands, competent to assist, advise and sympathize, and if men would interest themselves in helping to develop women's higher powers, instead of placing almost insurmountable barriers to hinder their progress, they would find it much to their own advantage. And women who are the most highly cultivated morally, mentally and religiously, are the very ones to do honor and reverence to good men, who possess the noblest attributes, and are the nearest akin to God and divinity. Contributor 11198. The unfair and unequal treatment of women continues to diminish, and the fairer sex is coming more to the forefront. In the professional arena, many women are proving themselves as capable and as aggressive as their male counterparts. Their achievements and successes clearly speak for themselves. For those women who want to expand their talents and abilities outside the home, there are increasing opportunities for them to do so. However, with all these expanding rights and benefits for women, there are certain limits. And again, verily I say unto you, that the Son of Man cometh not in the form of a woman. Wherefore, be not deceived. D&C 49:22-23. As we look back and then ahead, we ask, how much good has come from all these efforts for women's rights? Awareness of the problem is fine, but often more problems and troubles result in trying to solve the problem. Sheila Graham commented on this. For several decades, women have been told if they want to get ahead in the business world, they must suppress their feminine traits and behave like men. Women are different from men. Not better, not worse, different. Women look different, react differently, think differently, and that's all right. Feminine traits aren't inferior to masculine ones. They're complementary. Now, women have rights and choices. Women, how are you doing? Are you making the same mistakes so many men have made for thousands of years? What's wrong with women? Graham, Plain Truth, pages 12-13.